Hello, and welcome to a presentation today on co-designing young people's pathways to net zero futures. My name is Peter Kelly, and I'm a professor of education at Deakin University in Australia. Together with my colleagues Peter Craftel, Aranola Adafila, Luke Howie, Seth Brown, and James Goring, we've been working on this idea of developing young people's pathways, co-designing young people's pathways to net zero's futures through the idea of microcreds over the last 18 months or so, and in a number of other projects over the last 5 to 10 years. In the presentation today, I want to go over what we understand by net zero futures and why we want to focus on that, how we understand micro-credentials and digital badging and why we want to play in this space. What does gamified learning mean in the context that we're talking about? We want to outline how we imagine the project occurring over 3 years, where in year 1 we co-design, in year 2 we build, and in year 3 we test. Indicate that there are a number of possible first projects with colleagues and partners in Pakistan, in Ghana, and in Sao Paulo, which may be funded through an application to the Fund for Innovation in Development. And I want to finish up with what might be the next steps, including other project possibilities. So the UN Secretary General has declared that climate change represents a code red for humanity. In that context, Code Red Alliance is a group of academics and researchers from public universities around the world who have been working in a number of spaces over a number of years, but have come together to look at how it is that we might develop interventions and projects that can help young people's thriving and adaptation in the context of these crises. The project that we're going to talk about today comes from that sort of ambition and aspiration to develop those sorts of projects on both a global scale, but also from a place-based response to these crises. So why a focus on net zero futures? There's an official story of net zero futures that comes from the Paris Agreement of 2015 that seeks to limit global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. In order to do that, the idea of net zero futures suggests that we need to be carbon neutral by 2050, that we need to think about what sustainable development means in order to meet those goals, that transition to net zero futures will be a transition to renewable energies and away from fossil fuels. In order to do that, there'll have to be significant technological innovation and global cooperation to put those technologies in place, but also to do a number of other things in order to reach those goals of net zero futures. The official story. There is another reality, if you like, that sits alongside and often in conflict with that official story. Net zero futures doesn't stop climate change. As I said, it's about limiting global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. In that context, climate change is baked in, is locked in, and what we're looking at is minimizing or mitigating the effects of continued global temperature rise on the climate. In addition, lots of people claim that there's greenwashing in the ways in which businesses, regions, cities, governments talk about net zero futures and how they will get there, which often leads to increased levels of distrust in relation to what people are claiming in relation to net zero futures. The sort of distrust feeds into climate wars, those arguments over what climate change is, who's causing it, and what should be done about it. And these are significant politicised debates about climate change and what should be done in relation to that. That reliance on technical innovation also creates technical hurdles, both in terms of the sorts of technologies, although most of the technologies that we might need already exist. It's how you actually fund those and put those into place. Significantly for the project that we're proposing here, one of the things that, or not just one of the things, but there would need to be significant behavioural change and processes of adaptation, both in order to make progress towards net zero futures, but also to live in net zero futures. And that behavioural change and adaptation, as we will see, is not evenly distributed around the globe. In this context, what are we trying to achieve? So if we have an official story and then a reality that contradicts or is in conflict often, how do we encourage young people to understand, develop their understanding, and think about what everybody's talking about when they talk about climate change and net zero futures? How do we encourage young people to read and write these futures? How do we develop their futures literacies so that they can be active stakeholders in their own futures, which is a key idea here, that we imagine young people as being active stakeholders in futures that they will inherit and inhabit. So in this sense, we've framed a project that is the most important part on this slide for what comes following this slide is this idea of co-design. We want to work with partners and collaborators and young people and other stakeholders in particular places to co-design our starting points for these micro-credentials, for these short courses about what net zero futures might look like. To start from where young people live, to start from where other stakeholders are seeking to work with young people, and to then progress through a number of levels to a point where they can have some shared understandings with other young people around the world about what climate change is and what net zero futures might be and what their place is in those futures. We seek in doing this to create forms of values. We want to foster aspirations and resilience and capabilities among young people for what we imagine are the challenges and opportunities of net zero futures. We want to do that through this idea of micro-credentialing and digital badging, which we understand as being about creating and capturing different forms of value for young people in their communities. And we understand this value in a really broad sense as being social, cultural, and economic. It's not just about skills, it's not just about capabilities, it's about a whole variety of other things that are to do with resilience and adaptation and well-being. The work we've done in a number of projects, the micro-credential for neurodiverse young people in Whittlesea, the Vital Arts project, where we're developing microcred to capture 21st century skills that are created in youth arts activities in our partner organisations, the idea of developing microcreds for sustainable futures draws on the work that, as I said, we've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years. So we have a sense of what's needed here, and we have a sense of the ways in which this can be applied in different places and then scaled up. The words microcreds and digital badging may be a bit strange in the first instance, but if we imagine a microcred as a short course in which some sort of value is created or abilities developed, and that we then assess and accredit those capabilities and forms of value, then a short course is nothing new. Calling it a microcredit is something new. What's also new is the idea of a digital badge, that once a young person meets the criteria for the award of a digital badge, we can send a link to that young person who can then circulate that link to whoever they like. Somebody clicks on that link, it opens up, and it tells the reader what capabilities, what skills, what forms of value have been created by that young person's participation in the short course. And importantly, who are the organisations, the institutions, the businesses, the philanthropy that have backed the development of this microcred and attest to the value that has been created. We have a framework, and we've developed a framework in a number of projects that enables us to think about how we make these microcreds work. So this learning occurs in a short course of some sort, offline, online, hybrid, a mix. You engage young people in a course where you want to develop some certain forms of value. You assess whether young people have been successful in achieving the tasks or completing the quests or demonstrating the capabilities that you want them to demonstrate. If they have, you can award them a digital badge. That digital badge can be circulated to whoever. As I said, it then becomes a way of capturing the value that has been created in that short course. In order to ensure trust in that value, you need a governance structure. We imagine establishing, if you like, a not-for-profit based organisation whose responsibility it would be to provide continuing oversight and governance so that trust can be maintained in the value of the digital badge and the forms of value that have been created by young people's participation in the short course. What may also be novel for some people is the idea of gamification. Gamification in education has been a concept that's been around for a number of decades, and it looks at the ways in which gaming and forms of gaming can inform the way in which you engage young people in various forms of learning. It's not just young people. Gamification is used in adult learning contexts as well. So it looks at the ways in which you can structure a learning experience that might involve completing tasks or quests or activities, that might involve progress through various levels, as ways of enhancing engagement, promoting skill development, providing feedback, encouraging collaboration and social learning. And importantly, you can build in real-world scenarios and activities and quests and world-building activities to enable young people to apply and demonstrate the capabilities that they've developed. In the gamified microcred for net zero futures that we imagine something, and this is a broad structure that will take much clearer shape through processes of co-design. We imagine a structure in which there's 4 levels, that you start at level 1, progress to level 2, to level 3, and to level 4. You will start as a young person at level 1 in a place that looks familiar to you and not to somebody. If you're in Pakistan, for example, and it will look familiar to you in that context, but not to somebody who's in Sao Paulo and or in Ghana or wherever else. So you enter from where you're at level 1. You engage in activities, tasks, quests. You complete those. You have time to attempt them a number of times. They start from where you are in your understanding about these things and take you forward in ways that will enable you to progress it through the following levels. As you complete level 1, we can ask you, as in all levels, and we will do this at all levels, to complete some sort of evaluation of your experience so that we can build up a sense of how young people engage with this through various levels. We'll ask you to complete some sort of instrument or survey about how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your learning, how you feel about the challenges that you're being introduced to. So we can track how you respond to these challenges as you go through the game. What we then award you at level 1 when you complete it, and level 2 when you complete it, and level 3 is an in-game badge. You'll have a better sense of what some of those might be if you look at another video on this site. As you progress through the levels, level 1 will be about where you're at and the starting point. Level 2 will still be about where you come from and where you live and the place in which you're living your life, but it might be more thematically arranged. It gives you a choice to pick a trajectory and a pathway through level 2 into level 3, where we start to broaden out the perspective into more global dimensions of these challenges, into level 4, where we imagine we can engage young people in teams from different parts of the world to complete tasks or quests or activities in order to be awarded the digital badge that comes with the successful completion of level 4. We have another video where our web and app designer colleague has put together some of the possibilities that come from new artificial intelligence technologies, web tools, the ability to create worlds, build avatars, translate text into any language, have an avatar that speaks to you in the language that you're familiar with. Really exciting possibilities that new web-based tools enable and advances in artificial intelligence enable. And we want to use those in this context to create a really engaging, immersive learning experience for young people and for them to then work through the tasks and activities and quests that we want them to work through to demonstrate their capabilities and to progress through the different levels. So, as I said at the start, we imagine a 3-year project. I want to talk about the co-design element here as being really important, not only in year 1, but also when we're building and when we're testing what it is that we've built. We want to work with partners and collaborators and stakeholders, and by stakeholders, we also include young people. We want to talk to them, interview them, survey them, get them involved in various activities in a process that enables us to establish starting points. What are young people's futures literacies already, in order to start the journey through the trajectory through the different levels. As we do that, we'll be engaged in a learning design process where we turn that information, that knowledge, that data into packets of work, into activities, into quests that are appropriate for the particular contexts at level 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Building on, as I'll talk about in point 6, the theories of learning that we bring to this project. As we work through the learning design process, we'll also be working with our digital learning platform web and app developer to think about the ways in which we structure this as an online experience using the sorts of artificial intelligence and web-based tools that are available to us at this point in time. We'll also work through the digital badging architecture process. Do we build the badges into the site that we're building, or do we use a commercial platform to issue the digital badges? We'll work at establishing a not-for-profit that will provide governance and build trust in what it is that we're building. And as I said, there's forms of evaluation that we build into the microcred that are informed by particular ideas about gamified learning, and our theories of learning give us a way to articulate how we imagine change and impact as occurring through what it is that we're doing. As I said at the start, we've had initial conversations with colleagues and partners who we've worked with in the past in Pakistan, in Ghana, and in Brazil about their involvement, the existing networks of young people, the existing partners they work with, the ways in which we can build on that track record of working in these places to develop a proposal to submit to the French government's International Development Agency Fund for Innovation in Development. FID funds and development projects around the world. It offers funding at different levels of projects in terms of are these pilot projects or are we scaling up? In this context, because of the track record we have in micro-credentialing and with partners and collaborators in these places, we're looking at scaling up what it is that we've done into something new, leveraging what we've learned elsewhere and scaling up into what I've just talked about here. The thing I'd stress here at this point in time is it's a competitive process, very competitive process. There's no guarantee of success in the funding application process. Funding application is an open call throughout the year that are reviewed. The projects submitted are reviewed 4 times a year. There's an initial process that's almost an expression of interest, and then if you're successful there, you go into developing a full proposal to be funded by FID. It provides one opportunity, and it's one opportunity that we're working on at the moment, but we need to think about what other opportunities might be available. So the next steps, starting points are the FID process. So over the next couple of months, we'll work with our partners and collaborators in different parts of Pakistan and Ghana and Sao Paulo in Brazil, thinking about what co-design would look like, culturally appropriate processes for co-design would look like, what would be the starting points and trajectories, what would they look like and feel like in these different places, possibly identifying co-funders from business, philanthropy or government to assist in the application, aiming to submit a FID application by the end of 2024. As I said, in the previous slide, in an incredibly competitive process with no guarantee of a favourable outcome. So what other opportunities exist that are not dependent on a competitive process? What we're aiming to do with this video and with the other resources on this page is to circulate our project proposal in various networks. And we would hope that if you're watching this video, that's something that you would consider doing. We'd look to identify possible partners, collaborators, and funders who would support what it is that we're attempting to do here, and to think about and schedule what follow-up conversations might be appropriate in relation to these other possibilities in ways that are not reliant on a competitive process. So finally, thank you if you've lasted through the presentation to get it to this point. I hope that the explanation of what it is that we want to do has been clear, relatively so. Very happy, myself and my colleagues, to discuss the options and the possibilities here elsewhere, to schedule a meeting or of any sort to catch up about this and talk through what it is that we've discussed. And on that context, I'd say I'd just close with, if you like, why do something like this? And again, when the challenges seem so big and when the challenges seem so diverse across the globe, what can be done? And of course, there's lots of people doing lots of different things, and we don't claim to have any sort of answer to the scale of those problems. But in this context, we think this is a valuable way to work with young people in their communities to create and capture forms of value, forms of social, cultural, and economic value that will increase young people's critical literacies of what net zero futures are and what they might be, because those futures, whatever they look like, are futures that young people will inhabit and inherit. And we have some responsibility and obligation to think about how we work to make those futures in which young people can thrive and adapt to those challenges and opportunities. So thank you.